What is this thumbnail?
Look at that beautiful man.
Welcome into the Morning Glory Show. I hope your shit showered shaved. I hope you got your mayo in your cup because it is time to tighten up. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, B-Will at BWillTFTV and at TFTV Sports, and Jonathan Miller at Esports Valen. How we doing today, boys?
Great, man. Weather's right. We got, one more week until the dead period's a little bit over? So we get a little more life.
5 days, if I remember correctly.
Oh, my.
It kicks off on the 23rd. They arrive on the 23rd, and the practice starts the 24th. So we're super excited. Last show before we have actual content. If you guys are joining us for the first time, now's the time to join us. So do us a couple favors. Head over to YouTube, type in Glory Day Sports, go over there, hit subscribe, and that enters you in for this wonderful Tajay Spears signed jersey giveaway. And we got it in the mail, boys. So as soon as we hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, that is going to be shipped out to one of you lucky subscribers. So definitely help us out with that. And then additionally, fantasy football right around the corner. This is going to be the third rendition of the the Glory Day Sports Fantasy Championship. Half point PPR, $20 buy-in. This will be the third league that we'll put together for this, 12 teams per league. We do a lot of inter-conference stuff amongst the leagues. It's really fun. It's a 3-keeper pick. We do a raffle each year, so you end up with 2 of those. So last year we had Justin Jefferson go back to the draft pool. Super fun league. It's super fun. It's all just Titans fans. So definitely, if you're interested in that, I'll have a link down below where you can just join in, and then we'll get you all taken care of. So we're gonna hop into
real quick.
Yeah.
What do the viewers have to do to get a Titans signed Jake jersey?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
What does that jersey look like? Is it a Titans jersey? We could definitely
Titans jersey.
So we have a goal right now, that 1,000 subscribers. Once we hit that, there's going to be a new goal. And it might be a Glory Day jersey in itself, and maybe all 3 of us sign it. I think we'll think
number
about
7 for 7 a.m. That wouldn't be bad.
I like it.
That'd be cool.
We want to get there before week 1 of the preseason, though. We can get there. We're a little.
It says Willis on the back.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll debate that. And this kind of leads us into Ashton, his first question of the day. And if you guys saw the thumbnail, we're talking Burks. He's looking good. Not gonna lie, a lot more muscle now. He's looking beefed up.
Did y'all see y'all's Explore page or something? How did y'all come across that picture?
I was scrolling this orange and black page on the internet, and it was the first thumbnail to pop up. So, but yeah, Treylon.
B-Well, do you know what this is?
What is this, Jonathan?
This is a Birdman hand rub. That's what this is. I don't want to hear nothing about is this man in shape. Do we recall at the start of OTAs when B-Will said this? No, I'm kidding. Imagine it was like cuts to it. He mentioned like, oh man, he's looking a little tubby. You're looking a little out of shape. Bro was huffing and puffing. Like, yes, we get it. But man, you got to look at this man's physique and be like, does he not care? Does he not see what is in front of him here? The opportunity to not have to be A.J. Brown, to not have to be this stud receiver. He can just learn, be a part of the offense, get healthy, and be a valued member of the receiving corps and show that he can take the step. Bro, I'm telling you, I said it at the beginning of the offseason, how important this offseason was for him, not just in the fact that he had to show value to the team to stay on the team, but that they were truly setting him up to be successful in this role where he doesn't have to be the guy. So that's why I'm excited for Treylon Burks. Like seeing things like this where he's looking like he's in great shape, he's thriving. He just had his first kid. He's like, all right, I got to feed my family now. Like when you have a child, things change as a man. It just does. That's all I'm saying. He's looking good. Very optimistic for Treylon Burks.
Jonathan, you're buying this Treylon Burks stock like it's NVIDIA in 2018.
I'm sipping it like it's a sweet Arizona sweet tea on a hot day, baby. Just
NVIDIA 2018 stock. And I just hope we're at the end of the day, probably about midway through the season, you're not doing, what Birdman did at the Breakfast Club when he walked out of the interview. When you walk out of one of these shows after I get on your ass about Treylon Burks. But my hope is that he does well. I mean, this was the first step for him to, be better and show that he has a little I'm not gonna say give a damn about himself off the field, but we're seeing the fruit of some work now, which is good. This is something that we've been asking for a while. It started when he very first got to Nashville, when he showed up out of shape and was huffing and puffing and had asthma. So it's an encouraging sign, but it's August.
You got to put it on the field. It's got to translate. And I mean, if he was to put all of this work last season, maybe Calvin Ridley isn't even on this team. And we'll see how this transpires. He's going to be the best gunner in the NFL, 110% out there.
Perfect physique for a gunner.
Great. No, I think I'm not the biggest Treylon Burks fan. I haven't ever been since we ever drafted him. But this is good signs. He is putting in work. It is proven. They've hyped him up all through mini camp and OTAs that he's running more than anybody else on the team. He's got the highest clock miles per hour mark. So, I mean, if he can transfer it and stay healthy this season, I feel a lot better about this receiving core going forward with Will Levis, with the aging of a Tyler Boyd, a Calvin Ridley, and a DeAndre Hopkins. So I think that should be super exciting, and going into training camp is definitely going to be one on everybody's notes. How is Treylon's progressing? How is he mind melding with Will Levis out there? So I think that kind of brings us to the next topic, is who steals
Jake. Hold on, Jake.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this guy realizes he just saw his kid. His agent probably talked to him and said, "Hey, buddy, you better get your ass in gear. You ain't gonna pay for it." Yeah. I mean, next year he's playing for next year's contract right now. It ain't gonna be with us.
He's playing for any contract right now.
Yeah. So he's playing for a camp body. I might be going. That's a little extra.
He's gonna be on the team.
He's gonna be on a team for sure.
He'll be on a team, but he's playing for his deal for next year right now. So
you heard it.
Where the hell was this?
Brandon Ayuk for Treylon Burks. Straight up.
Hey man, I just want to know where the hell this was 2 years ago, a year ago. That's what irritates me, and that's why he gets so much stick from me.
He deserves.
Where has this shit been?
He deserves all the criticism he's receiving. We're having fun with it on this show, and I kind of like lean to one side, B Will leans to the other, and that's cool. But like at the end of the day, like conservatively speaking, he hasn't shown enough to be like, okay, we need to build around this guy, or he should be a primary piece to this receiving core. But I'm grateful that we might potentially not see another first round pick burned on this team from the John Robinson era, because we have a new front office, we have a new coaching staff, we have a modern offense, and this guy gets a chance to not have to be A.J. Brown, because that's just, we talk about it all the time, but that's just plain and simple. That's what it was. He was literally what we got back in a trade for what was probably the greatest receiver of this franchise's history in terms of talent. So yes, he should receive the feedback and the criticism that he's getting now, but we should be optimistic as a fan base to see, like, okay, he has a shot at the very least to have a normal developmental experience for a wide receiver now. And you can't honestly say that he had that in his first couple of years. Now, granted, you have to stay on the field. Like, it's not Vrabel's fault that he's hurt, right? But at the end of the day, you want to set up your players for the best successful experience they can possibly have. And I don't believe the Titans did that in his first couple of years. So we will see. But
you're right. You're right. Todd Downing and Tim Kelly and Mike Vrabel did not do him any favors at all. I mean, you talk about that's probably one of the worst situations you can walk into as a receiver in 2024. I mean, you might as well went to Mike Ditka and 86 Bears. But, it's a good point that you bring up with John Robinson and us not finally getting past that. At least now we see a process for some of these picks. I say some. And that's something that really keeps me up and going and optimistic about, the direction of this team in the future. There's some that I didn't see the process. Sweat, the fellow from Tulane, but those are 2 picks out of 5, so we got reason to be optimistic, especially with the front office. They've done a hell of a job this offseason.
I think the biggest concern after John Robinson departed was we had no talent on this roster outside of Jeffrey Simmons. And that was really it. We didn't have the top end. We didn't have the depth. I think we've really come in and fixed that upper end. And now we're seeing that depth start to fill out. If Treylon Burks is our biggest concern as the 4th wide receiver on this depth chart, we're tenfold better than we were last season going into the year, where we were 32nd on everybody's rankings for wide receivers. It's definitely improving. We're getting better. Now it's just filling out the bottom half of this roster. And that's just a testament of what Ryan Carthon has done thus far since getting the job. There was a talk that he wasn't ready when he got the promotion and moved up in that GM position, and Mike Vrabel wasn't happy about it. In my opinion, Ryan Carthon has knocked it out of the ballpark thus far. Obviously, we don't agree with everything that he's done, but you're not going to agree with any of these 32 GMs out there with everything that they do. So Ryan Carthon is building this team.
As Titans fans? Because we did predictions PTSD. A couple weeks ago. I think that's what it is.
It's trauma.
Yeah.
We did predictions a couple weeks. This is an honest conversation here. We did predictions a couple weeks ago. None of us predicted over 10 wins. I think, Jonathan, you might have got, 9 or 10?
No, I think I predicted 10 wins.
I think he was the only one.
Yep.
Okay. Me and you, Jake, weren't close to 10. I think we're at 8. But we look at that and we can say, the top end of the roster has gotten better. We've added guys like Snead. We've added guys like, we got a J.C. Latham at left tackle. So we've raised the ceiling of this roster. We've also raised the floor of this roster with depth signings. Cheeto can go in the first conversation, but Cheeto can go as a depth signing. We've got a guy like Jamal Adams is providing some good depth at safety. Why are we still so down at 7 or 8 wins if we've seen this much improvement in this team? That's my question.
I think there's just so many questions that still revolve this team. We don't know how it's going to all meld together because we haven't seen it. Like you just alluded to, we might have 16 new starters out there when you only start 22 on offense and defense. So we're bringing in this new coaching staff that has never called plays on either side of the field. And then you pair that in with a 2nd round quarterback from last season who we're all super high on. And we saw the promise. But when you look around national media, everybody else is telling us that we're wrong. So how does that allude to this new offense and the scheme where we're bringing in 2 new wide receivers to start out there? We're bringing in Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears. We really like what we saw last season, but at the end of the day, he was a 3rd-round rookie last year. Is he ready to take that role from Derrick Henry? And how does that all allude to the worst offensive line in football last year? And we're bringing in and switching a tackle from the right side to the left side. I mean, there's so much optimism on this team, but there's also the potential that it all just blows up in our face. And I think Titans fans have seen that more often than not. And I think that's why we're all so tentative to go all in on this team.
I think what's funny is I think you guys are in the minority. I think that most Titans fans are on the side of optimism. And we've been that way for a long time. Like I've predicted 10 wins for teams that didn't get anywhere near close to 10 wins, right? And there's like a bunch of factors, injury, whatever, right? But the difference with this team is we asked a question about a month ago, I think it was, when we had Jim Wyatt. And the question was to Jim Wyatt, is this the most different Titans team that you've seen from one year to another? in terms, schematically, roster turnover, coach turnover, like everything. And he basically said yes, that he thinks this is the most different team that he's covered, with the exception of one of the earlier Titans teams when they first moved to Tennessee, right? And that was a Super Bowl contending team. So I think for us as fans, it's really easy to be like, Calvin Ridley signing and, D-Hop the year before and L'Jarius Sneed trade and like all these blockbuster moves, at least in terms of our roster, and say, okay, well, yeah, this is 10 wins, or yeah, this is playoffs, this is whatever. But the biggest question mark, to Jake's point, is that our quarterback is unproven, mostly unproven, right? We know he's got talent and we know that the potential is there. We saw it in year one. But nobody can truly predict how this kid's going to come out, because guess what, guys? There is a real chance that he comes out and he's the guy that we all hope he is. And this team contends in the first 4 weeks, and somehow we squeak out with 2 or 3 wins in the first 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden, this team is getting Houston hype. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's possible. We're not going to say it is because we haven't seen it, and that's not this team traditionally. But that's totally possible. And then again, on the flip side of that coin, Will Levis could struggle the same as he did last year, even with the talent around him, and not quite have the start or maybe middle of the season that we need him to have to be a contending team. Those things are both very much reality. And so nobody can quite predict it because this is such a different team. We haven't seen a modern offense in a Tennessee Titans uniform ever. With the exception of the Ken Wisenhunt era, right? Where we were throwing the ball a bunch, right? Like that was really the only time we saw like a modern passing offense. And that it was talent. It was void of talent. So this is a much different team, and it's really hard to predict. And saying 10 wins or 8 wins is like, at this point, we're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks, because nobody truly knows. And that's part of the allure of the season to me. It's like, okay, this could either be a huge year and it's like, we're back, or we could be looking at needing a quarterback going into next season. Those are 2 very, very real realities that we could see.
I think Carlton's hedged his bets with that second option, though, and that's what gives me the most optimism. Is he's hedged his bets against Will Levis, right? So he bet on Will Levis last year, drafted him in the second round. He knows the time frame and that schedule to figure it out with him is a lot quicker because we drafted him in the second round and don't have that 5th-year option. So it sort of puts a little fire under our ass that we've got to get talent in quick. You know what I mean? In whatever way that may be possible. Blockbuster trades, L'Jarius Sneed, big time signing free agents like Calvin Ridley, being very, very, very aggressive. But he's also hedging his bets against him because if Levis doesn't work out and we draft a quarterback next year really high, we still have the floor of this roster is still a lot higher than it could have been if we did it. You know what I mean? So that's what gives me – that's what really pleases me the most with Carthon, with what he's done, man. You can see the strategy with it. It's a game.
In that same conversation, though, B-Will, here's the scary part. This team is now so good. The floor is so much higher that this is not a top 10 picking team anymore. It's not. If Will Levis, I'm not even going to say it, but if Will Levis is unavailable and it has to be Mason Rudolph, right, which is what it'll be, with potentially Malik Willis sticking around, maybe practice squad or something, I don't know. But if it's Mason Rudolph, a Mason Rudolph-led offense with this roster construction is not a top 10 team. You're not picking in the top 10. That's a 7-win team still, in my opinion. So that's the sucky part, is that if Will Levis is for some reason is evaluated as not the guy, right, then you don't exactly have great position to go into the following draft with, by the way, without another 3rd-round pick, void of another 3rd-round pick. Only having a 1st and 2nd rounder to try to get your quarterback is tough. So, who knows? Hopefully, that's worst case scenario in my opinion.
I don't know, man. I think we're a Will Levis, L'Jarius Sneed, and I'm knocking on wood, or Calvin Ridley high ankle sprain away from walking into Nissan on Sundays, trying to understand how the hell are we going to get this done today. You know what I mean? So we're not, and you can say that about any team. That's the NFL. That's what's beautiful about the NFL. The parity of the NFL is that we're not far. For me, we're closer to a top 10 pick than we are finishing top 10 in the league. That's where I think, but I don't know what you think about that, Jake. I think we're a lot closer to top 10 pick than top 10 finish.
Man, I got us right in the middle. So I think this is a good contrast between it all, because I do see the floor being 3 to 4 wins. I see the opportunity where that could potentially happen. I see where we could win the AFC South as well. I think we could be a playoff team this year. And I want to be optimistic and say we might lead slightly higher towards the playoff contention opposed to bottom of the barrel. I could see it playing out a lot, though. It really just pans off of what Will Levis is. I think he will be the starter. Yeah, he'll be the starter regardless of his play all season. If he gets injured, that's the only thing I could see Mason Rudolph coming in for relief. He could be the worst quarterback in the league, and I think he's starting all season just because we got to know. We got to know if he's the guy or not, and that's the biggest thing. And then if we're looking at next season, and maybe they are middle of the pack, we realize that Will Levis isn't the guy. The draft, it's not a lot of talent this year. I hate to break it to y'all. I'm not super high on Shador Sanders or Carson Beck or any of these other guys. And
Shador.
Shador. I mean, he's my QB1 as of now. But when I compare him to guys of the past that have come out, I mean, you can compare him to the Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence's, and all of those. It's not the same ballpark. He's that next step down. He probably would have been QB4 this season. So we'll see how that goes. And if they're going the free agent route, so just some guys that we might be looking at is a guy like Dak Prescott. Jordan Love is going to get signed. We know that. He's still up for next year. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, not a lot of talent outside of those top two maybe. So it's going to be very interesting, and I think it's all really just leads so heavily on Will Levis and what he can do this year.
How much did Mike Vrabel ruin this franchise?
I think Mike Vrabel gets too much hate. I still think he might be the best head coach we've ever had.
I'm saying we wouldn't be in this predicament. We wouldn't be in this predicament if he didn't babble to Rossini about the pick. That's why. That's where I'm leaning.
Yeah. I think that he is just not the modern coach that we needed, right? Like at the end of the day, he turned this franchise around, like he really did, and he was the sticking point for recruiting. He was the sticking point for like the toughness, and he fit like the mold of what a traditional good Titans football team is. But that's not winning in the NFL anymore. It's not, and by the way, it hasn't for a long time. So really, this is just a change that we have needed as a franchise. And thank God Miss Amy pulled the trigger. She just saved us all, because Vrabel's not a bad coach, and he would have had us like in contention at the very least. But we were not going to get over the hump with Ryan Tannehill at quarterback, and we sure as hell were not going to get over the hump with just rinky-dink offensive coordinators that we keep pulling together and running the ball with Derrick Henry. It's like, because if it wasn't Derrick, who was it going to be? It was going to be another bell cow type of running back. It was going to be running the ball 25, 35 times a game, control the clock, play good defense, turn over the – like, bro, that's done with. So I'm just ecstatic that we are looking into the future with where this offense needs to go. And we've been pounding the table on that offense, and it's been worth it. It's worth it to mention it all the time this offseason because of how big of a deal it is.
And maybe it was too much. Yeah, maybe it was too much with Vrabel. I mean, from me saying he ruined the franchise, but my thing is you can't build up the city and tear this bitch down when you leave. You know, and that's sort of what happened here. I mean, we could talk about how much he built up the franchise and how much improvement he did. We was a playoff team when he got hired. We were not a playoff team when he left.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think that goes back to John Robinson. I think Mike Vrabel's biggest thing was he was a good coach with a bad roster, and he elevated them to be middle of the pack more often than not, which kept us out of the premium draft spots. So we weren't able to rebuild this team with those great picks, but John Robinson, again, probably would have just squandered those anyways. So at the end of the day, I think Mike Vrabel gets too much hate just because of the recency bias behind it all. I think he's still a good coach. I think he's going to have another head coaching gig here in the soon future, I would imagine. And I think he'll do just fine. I think for Nashville and what we're looking to build up this market, I don't think he just fits the market anymore. He's too closed off. He doesn't want to talk to media. And Brian Callahan is the polar opposite of that. He might be too open to media. He's getting it out there, and I think that's what's really going to shift this market. And Nashville has the opportunity to be a big market, I think. It's going to take time. Yeah. Amy's investing. The Preds, they're investing. Obviously, they got the Volunteers. we're throwing money.
I have a whole nother show about the Preds.
Yeah.
Them boys are having a good time this offseason.
Yeah.
Keep going to Broadway, buy them drinks, baby. And getting those
fuel.
hotels helps with the hotel tax.
But yeah, I think that's probably a good stopping point for there. We're gonna go and shift into training camp talk, and we're talking just hype. This is like we've been talking about. There's so much hype going into this season that could go right or wrong, but we get that every year. Last 2 seasons really, it's been Kyle Phillips. Before that, we've had Tajay Sharp in the past. We got Adoree Jackson. Everybody talks about these players coming in and progressing through training camp, and then we get into the regular season, and they might fall off the map. It's not always the case. We've seen it in the past as well. I mean, I can't think of any guys off the top of my head, but we've seen guys progress through the offseason and actually contribute on this team. Since B-Will, you have the first pick in the draft. Jonathan, who is your guy going into the training camp that you think is just going to steal the hype for this team?
Yeah. Well, there's one guy who's stealing the hype all offseason in the best way possible for us, especially considering the contract, and that's Calvin Ridley. But that's not my pick. I think Calvin Ridley is going to continue to steal eyes because he's always been a workout warrior. Like you've been able to, like his route running has been so great. His cuts, he's just really impressive, like athlete. But the player that I think is going to steal the training camp hype this season that we're going to be talking about a lot for maybe a lot of the similar reasons as Calvin is going to be Jaquan Jackson. So Jaquan Jackson's my guy because, I mean, again, similar to Calvin, from an athlete perspective, this guy looked really, really good during rookie minicamp, all the way through mandatory OTAs, was just absolutely stealing the show. Obviously, there's only so much you can get from running a route against no defender and, whatever, but he was catching balls that were far outside of a normal receiver's radius. He was looking really, really good and sharp through his cuts, looking like a professional, right? And so obviously we said a lot of the same things about Kyle Phillips, his rookie season, and even during the offseason yet last year. But I think the big thing for Jaquan is that the expectation is pretty low. Like a lot of the fan base didn't even really want the player at the time, myself included. And I think that he has a lot of potential because not only are we going to be able to see him maybe potentially add some value in the offense, but more importantly, should be a dynamic factor in the backfield for this kick return situation. I think that's one thing that the fan base is not really paying much attention to right now. Like that we're going to see a much different special teams holistically for all teams. So I think it'd be really cool to see Tajay and Jaquan back there in kick return. The two lane buddies, I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, I think Jaquan Jackson is going to continue to improve, continue to, raise some eyebrows. And I think he's going to be one of the main names we talk about on the offensive side.
I think Jaquan has started a lot harder than a lot of fans really anticipated. I know B-Will is going to probably talk about his guy that he wanted there here in just a minute. But Jaquan Jackson, rookie out of the 6th round, out of Tulane. I mean, Tajay was there with him when he got drafted. Before the Titans even knew that they were hanging out together. They knew they were friends now, obviously. But Jaquan comes in, he adds a speed element to this team that the receiving core is sorely lacking. He's got the speed out there. And at the Senior Bowl, I really liked what I saw. But he's going to be a smaller slot receiver. This guy you're probably not going to play on the outside too much. But when Tyler Boyd comes off the field, Jaquan Jackson's coming on, and he's going to be able to be that Khalif Raymond role for you. He's going to be able to stretch the defense. And then Will Levis, he's going to throw it deep. And this gives him a deep target potentially. And at the end of the day, we're probably talking 250 to 450 yards, maybe on the higher end. But I mean, that with Will Levis playing quarterback, that could be 10 catches just because of how he's gonna perform out there. So I like what we're seeing out of Jaquan, and it's gonna be very interesting how this all plays out. But he's probably wide receiver 5 as of right now, and that's
in my mind he is
perfectly fine with it.
Yeah,
he might be stealing Kyle Phillips' job. We'll
Yeah.
see how many wide receivers are kept on this team. And as of right now, I think Jaquan Jackson is above Kyle Phillips.
And even if he takes Kyle Phillips' jobs, I'd say that's a pretty big upgrade on Kyle Phillips, just for how much he offers outside of the receiver room, right? So we get some help on special teams. He offers a little bit more in the receiver room to me than Kyle Phillips because he's a little more he has a little more to his game than Kyle Phillips does, right? So, I could definitely see that with Jaquan Jackson. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at it. I mean, he's got to come good considering who's on the board then, But we're going to mine. Part of me really wants to say I had 2 linemen in my head, and they're not going to get any hype because they're linemen, right? But I'll probably go with a DB in Roger McCreary. I think Roger McCreary is going to get a lot of love this offseason. I mean, this is going to be a big offseason for him, and I'm sure he's been with L'Jarius Sneed in the offseason learning some of the tricks of the trade. I've alluded to it before in the show. L'Jarius Sneed himself came from the inside as a slot guy, worked to the outside. That's a path that McCreary has in his career. He has that in his tool set to possibly get there. He's a little undersized, but there's tricks of the trade that he could help with. There's been corners that have been 5'10" and have been successful in this league, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
I think working with L'Jarius Sneed this offseason and also Cheeto as well, I think that'll really help Roger McCreary. You got to think some of these guys that are in the NFL, especially DBs wise, when they get to the NFL, DB is one of the hardest positions to play in the National Football League and football, period. So these guys come from high school. They're the best DB on their team. They go to college. They're the best DB on their team. Like Roger McCreary was the best DB on that Auburn team. They're the bar at their team and in that DB room. But then you get to the NFL, and McCreary was still the bar as a DB in this room. I mean, he was. But now you had guys like L'Jarius Sneed. You had guys like Cheeto Awuzie, guys that have done it in this league and that can show you what they're doing and then show you also on the field and explain it to you as well. And then you got Denard Wilson on top of that. Roger McCreary has the opportunity to take a really, really, really big step this offseason and definitely in his career. I mean, that's probably why the front office is not as worried about corners as we are, because they look at Roger McCreary as the heir to that L'Jarius Sneed role on the outside eventually.
You
don't
think
keep a guy that's good.
Trent McDuffie step with like L'Jarius had? You think he can take that type of step?
I think naturally will, because he's going to be on 3s instead of 1s. So he was on 1s last year. So he's going to be facing a lesser talented, and it's not going to be cut and dry like that, but he's going to be facing not the upper echelon guys. He's going to be inside. So he's going to be facing slot guys, and he might move around. Sneed might move around, but Sneed might move around with the 1. I talked about this on the X1 show a couple weeks ago that I think Sneed's going to do a lot of shadowing. I don't see us paying that much money for Sneed and him not shadowing the 1 receiver following him around all year. So that makes it so much easier on guys like Cheeto Awuzie, guys like McCreary, when they're taking on 2s and 3s instead of the 1. You know what I mean? So I think McCreary has a chance to have a huge year. And for the McDuffie route, I don't know. I think McDuffie's a little bit of a better. He's more athletic than McCreary, so that's why I don't know if he'll take that type of route, but he can be on that plane of improvement for sure.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like just from a development standpoint, definitely not comparing those players because McDuffie's very talented, but I mean, so is McCreary. Like he is. When we traded for L'Jarius Sneed, what was it? I think there was 4 players last year that didn't have a single touchdown caught on them, and L'Jarius Sneed was one of the 4. McCreary was the second of the 4. Yep. So yeah, like I think it sucks. The secondary was so categorically bad that Roger McCreary, as good as he was, just kind of was like, oh, doesn't matter. Whole team got, we're getting destroyed here. So his success just kind of got glazed over. But yeah, he's been very, very good. And there's a lot of optimism there. I agree with you. I think that he could be a sneaky candidate for being one of the best players on the defense.
I think with Roger coming out of Auburn, what he did best was he was a press man corner for him. He did it very well. The biggest thing for him was the arm length coming out. That's what everybody's concern was. And then once we bring him into the NFL, he played more snaps than any defensive player in the NFL as a rookie. And then last season, we talked about him not allowing a touchdown. So if he can just pair with Denard Wilson, bring that completion percentage down slightly. And I do agree that L'Jarius Sneed is going to do a lot of shadowing. So I think Roger McCreary might not be primarily just slot. I think he's going to be one of the best 3 corners out there regardless. And I think he might see some more snaps on the perimeter this season. And he's going to get in their face, and he's going to be asked to do what he feels is natural to him. With Mike Vrabel, they play a lot of off ball, which allowed for those easy catches underneath. Denard Wilson's not going to allow that. You're going to have to fight for these catches. And that's what Roger McCreary does best. And he's not afraid to get in the run game. He's going to hit you hard. He's going to fill those lanes. So I'm super excited for Roger McCreary. I think we talked about it maybe months ago at this point, but I think Roger McCreary could potentially be one of those all-pro, Pro Bowl level players for us. And he's forgotten in the wind behind the L'Jarius Sneed and Chidobe Awuzie just because of how great this offseason's been so far.
You think about it, too, with the signing of Jamal Adams. Looks like we're going to play a lot more dime as well. So, that's gonna help McCreary out as well. I mean, he's not going to – Jamal Adams, he'll be in the box a little bit, taking tight ends. Hooker can take tight ends. I mean, we're going to be moving a lot in that, on the backside of that defense in game. So it's going to be interesting to see because, like you said, I see Sneed traveling, shadowing the number one, and then the rest of the DBs get in where they fit in if we're not playing zone. But it's going to be a lot of press man.
Going to help the backers too.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. There's going to be lots of movement pre-snap, I think.
A lot more blitzes.
Exotic blitzes.
That's McCreary. Slot blitzes coming and just being active. So McCreary's a guy that's always around the ball, always making a tackle. I mean, he's the type of guy that's going to thrive in this type of defense, this front-footed defense, not just sit back in zone and try and be cerebral, bend till you don't break. McCreary's going to exceed in this type of defense. I guarantee it.
Super excited for what this defense does. Even if Will Levis is middle of the pack, I think this defense could carry us into contention just because of how good we will be on the back end. If Kenneth Murray and Jack Gibbons and Otis Reese and Cedric Gray can get it all put together there on the interior, and we'll talk about Jamal Adams here in a little bit. If they can clear up that interior of the defense in the passing game, I'm super excited, which kind of leads me to my guy, which I've talked about a lot thus far, and that's James Williams out of Miami, former safety, converted linebacker. He's an athlete. He's still learning the position at linebacker. He has the ability to kind of be that dime backer. And the Jamal Adams signing, I think, might hurt him a decent amount just because I felt like James Williams could be that dime backer for us. I think Jamal Adams probably takes that role as of right now. But James Williams is still going to come out there. And I think when he's competing with that third team, second team out there in training camp, he's going to make some plays and he's going to get some hype just because of it. He hits really hard. And that's what people want to see. Obviously, they're not supposed to be doing that training camp, but in preseason games, he's going to make some plays and it's going to get some hype. But James Williams, I'm excited for him this season, kind of, but it's going forward. Into next season, I think he could be in contention for the linebacker starting role outside of – we'll see how it all plays out this year. But I see where the route where he could take a starting job. But, yeah, James Williams –
he makes the team, though, Jake? Like, what is your –
I do. I think, man, I haven't made my full 53-man prediction yet, but I do believe it'll be Jack Gibbons, Kenneth Murray, Cedric Gray, and then I could see James Williams being the fourth of that linebacker group.
He's so athletic. He should be able to play some special teams and help out on special teams.
I think that's what they drafted him for, is to play special teams, but he has the upside of being a great linebacker as well.
I'm eager to see where Molden fits into all this as well. Do they see him as a hybrid safety? Do they see him as a box safety? I don't like to see Elijah Molden in space because he's just not it doesn't suit his game, really. I don't want to see him covering big spaces of field. I don't want to see him playing center field. I really don't even want to see him on the hash 12 yards behind the ball as a safety. I want to see him.
I want to see him as a linebacker.
Yeah, that's not a slight on a Molden. That's just the type of player he is, right? So it just sucks for him that we've got a guy like McCreary that's in the slot and, sort of taking the role that Molden would have, because Molden would be an excellent slot corner in this system as well, just aggressive around the ball, Swiss Army knife type guy. So I'm eager to see what we do with him, but I feel like they have to find a role for Elijah Molden just because he's such a good football player. He's not the best athlete, but he's a good football player. You got to get guys like that on the field. They make plays.
Man, I just thought of a question. So obviously we sign Jamal Adams 1 year, $1.1 million deal. And it's really only like a $200,000 hit to the cap hit because we only pay the top 51 players on the roster.
He's getting paid WNBA money.
He's getting vet minimum. But that brings me to my question. Jamal Adams or Amani Hooker, B. Will? The people need to know. I just want to hear you say
what?
Who's the better player? Who's the better player?
Who's the better player? It's Jamal Adams, obviously. 100%. What it is. Jamal Adams is a former All-Pro hooker. The only All-Pro hooker sniffed is the jockstrap, the guy next to him. He ain't no All-Pro. Ain't even close to being one. Jamal Adams has talent. Amani Hooker does not have as much. Now, both are injured all the time. So, if the question should be, who's on the field more? that should be the question.
Oh,
and who earns their money more? Jake knew exactly what he was doing. And it's 7:30 more. I got a Kevin Byard jersey on, and he has a nerve to ask me about Amani Hooker. Are you serious?
I think that kind of starts the discussion for the Jamal Adams, what he does for this team. Jamal Adams, he's going to come in. Obviously, he's like he alluded to, former All-Pro, Pro Bowl player. I think it was 3 years running. Suffered the quad tear in 2022, which, listening to the OTP, he was in a cast for 5 months. Not a walking boot, a cast for 5 months. And then took over a year to actually recover from that. And then once he got on the field, I watched some tape from last season. I watched 2 games. What I saw was not a healthy player. He was trying to avoid contact, didn't have the speed anymore, and just kind of looked lost at times. I don't think it was a great scheme for him either, but they shut him down at the end of the year because of a knee injury. And I didn't check. I'm assuming it's same side. And if it's that quad pulling on that knee, that's going to lead to that degenerative issue there. But he's dealt with the torn labrum in the past. He had multiple concussions. These all add up over time. So I think a lot of Titans fans are seeing the name and they're getting really excited for it. And maybe it's like Harold Landry last season, where he started the season really slow because he was still recovering from the ACL injury. And as he progressed throughout the season, he got healthier and better. Maybe another offseason removed from that quad injury, we get closer to this 2020 Jamal Adams out there. But at the end of the day, this is a very low risk contract. And I think that tells you what the Titans really think about him going into the season.
There was a certain content creator that called this a high risk, low reward signing. And I can't disagree more, because of the commitment that the Titans made financially, right? And obviously, like the money, just bringing somebody in for literal pennies on the dollar to come and compete and add value to a spot that's, I don't want to say it's void of talent, but just needs a solidified starter at that position. But more importantly than that, you have a guy who has the continuity of the coaching staff, of the front office, of, and like B-Well said, like, regardless of what you think of him in his recent time, which I think is mostly injury riddled and the reason for his performance, this is a talented player. Not only is he a talented player, but he's returning to the coach that got that talent from him. And he's not just talented in the way that a traditional safety is. Like, this is a sideline to sideline freaky athlete. This guy is a linebacker safety hybrid, right? I'm not going to say any names and draw any comparisons for that reason, but he is a very, very good football player. Instinctively, from a leadership standpoint, this guy is Denard Wilson in player form. And this is a huge get for a Titans team that needs talent at that position. And when you get him for $1.125 million and it's an incentive-based deal, that is a steal, because now the Titans can go, okay, well, we really like what Jamal Adams adds. He doesn't have to be the 3-down starter. We can move him around and put him in certain sub packages. Like, you have a lot of flexibility, and not to mention, like, this guy has got a lot to prove. He knows that he hasn't been playing well. He knows he hasn't been able to stay healthy. We saw that in the OTP episode the interview he did with Mike Keith and Amy Wells, where he talked about, like, hey, I'm trying to get back into it. Like, I had some of the worst years of my life because of these injuries. Like, I'm really trying to prove something. So you get a guy who is a veteran, a thumper, a really good football player for a veteran minimum on a defense with a defensive coordinator that got the best years out of him. And he's only going into year 8. So what exactly are we talking about? This is high risk. There's nothing high risk about this move. If anything, the primary thing we should be talking about is how he adds value to the defense and how the Titans still have $24+ million to potentially go add someone else. That's not a crazy thought, right? It's probably not going to be Justin Simmons, but who knows? Maybe a former teammate, maybe another, acolyte of some of the members of this defensive coaching staff. Like, who knows? There's potential there. And I think that's the primary focus. For me, I'm really high on the signing. I think, like stylistically, he fits really well into this Denard Wilson defense. And I think, who knows, like we don't need him to be we don't need him to be Kevin Byard. He doesn't have to be a ball hawk. We need him to be a facilitator of the defence.
Denard Wilson got the best out of Bradbury last year. So, I mean, that's saying something up there. It's just, or not last year, but when he was in Philadelphia, he got Bradbury paid. So if you can get Bradbury paid, you're capable of many things. And I'm not going to say that I'm the most excited about this Jamal Adams signing, but it's an August signing of a safety was way, way, way low on the rankings of safeties in free agency, right? But there's reason to be optimistic there with Jamal Adams, because if he can return to just half of his form before injury, he's double the player that Amani Hooker is. I mean, let's be honest. But he fits in stylistically, like you said. He's a thumper. He's going to be that sort of dime backer, box safety thing. It just worries me now because Hooker's going to be playing center field, and that's not something that I don't see that being very conducive.
I think that's what
success.
Amani does best. I think that's what Amani does best.
He doesn't do much good, but I don't think center field is what I can't tell you what he does best, honestly. I look at it and, he forces some turnovers every now and then, but
I need to know what this man did to you, bro. Because when I'm watching tape, I don't see the same player.
He's stealing money from this organization is what he's doing. He's stealing money from the Titans. That's what I don't like. Without a mask on.
Wild.
Without a mask on. And he has a mask. He has a gap like this, like me. But, the mask has a cutout with that, so you can see who it is and everything. But, the guy it's not anything personal with Monty Hooker. Obviously, it's just the standard. It's really about the fans. That's my biggest gripe. I'm just taking it out on Hooker. But the standard for this Titans team and the standard for these players is not high enough, especially at the safety position. If we think Amani Hooker is a good player and if we think he should wear the damn green dot, it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to Kevin Byard. It's disrespectful to any safety that's come through on this team to think that Amani Hooker deserves that and deserves those accolades. He doesn't. I mean, that's just I'm done. I'm going to draw a line in the sand. This is the last I'm talking about Amani Hooker the rest of the
year. Bro, I'm trying to find a place to stand on to argue with you, and I don't get it. I just don't understand.
Yeah.
I'm just going to let you rock. And
I'm just saying. I want to see what Jamal Adams can do, though. He's going to help. We need another safety, though. And that's not even just about Amani Hooker. We still need a third safety, honestly.
I think we can all agree Jamal Adams is better than Mike Brown and Shaheem Carter.
No doubt.
I think that's what this role is. And even just saying Jamal Adams is a safety, I don't even agree with that. He's this almost cheetah position.
Thumper, baby.
We see that. Yeah, so he's going to be – you have to account for him where he is on the field, regardless of where he is at talent-wise at this point, because he's going to roll in the back end. He's going to come in as a linebacker. He's going to operate off stunts on blitzes. So he's going to be moved around as this almost chess piece for Denard Wilson, and that's what he did best with, and he had him. And that's when Jamal Adams was at what he did best. So I at the end of the day, it's a low risk. I don't get the high risk at any point in time. At the end of the day, they could cut him after training camp. We lose nothing.
It literally would not matter.
Right.
Yeah. Like you guys alluded to, I think we could use an additional safety, though, that can operate as a true safety. And that kind of brings us back to PK put out that the Titans are still in communications with Diggs and Justin Simmons. The price is really just the thing that's bringing us down. In my opinion, I don't think we're going to see another signing before training camp. I think they're going to get these guys on the field. They're going to see how it looks. And then if they need to address it, which we all think they probably will, I think that's when it's going to happen. I think it's going to happen in the middle of training camp or maybe even closer to the season. I would lead towards Quandre Diggs personally, just because I think he fits this team, what they're looking for, better than Justin Simmons. And I think there's a little bit more continuity with the Jamal Adams and the Denard Wilson. They like these guys. So That's kind of where I land on it, and I wouldn't
the
have a week
discrepancy
ago.
between me and you, Jake, right there. Is that like you think that Diggs fits the Titans a little more, and I think Simmons fits a little more, but it revolves around Hooker and his ability to play in center field, right? So that's
exactly.
No, I'm serious. I'm serious. I'm not making a joke.
Point.
That's why we tend to be on the other side with both players, because I think we need a guy that's in center field like Simmons. You think we need another box guy like Diggs. So,
well, no, I think we all agree that Justin Simmons was the better player to sign for this team, no doubt. Like, it's not even a question, right? But Justin Simmons is also sitting at the top of the market going, well, I should be paid as if I'm still like the similar contract I just came off of with Denver. And that's just like, that's not what the market is saying. So he has to wait.
No.
But also the big thing is Justin Simmons just spoke very loudly when he made a comment about he wants to be the final piece to a contender. So he doesn't think that the Titans are a contender, which is fine. And so he's holding out for, it's probably less about the money now and more about opportunity to just get plugged into a contending team. But anyways, that could be a whole nother conversation that I'll save for everybody. But essentially, I think that Justin Simmons is far and away the better coverage safety. But I just, he's just not the fit for this team for him. Like, right. I'm sure the Titans would have preferred to have him over Jamal Adams even. But I think that we're likely going to see potentially another safety added to the team if they feel like they need it. Jake, that's the best point, right? Like, we're not going to see them sign anybody else before we get into camp, most likely into the preseason, live game reps, see kind of how this defense does on the back end. Because, to B. Will's point, like, there's Elijah Molden is still on this team, very capable player, very good football player, has kind of been sidelined more and like had less reps because of his injury history. Also, Amani Hooker, regardless of what B. Will thinks, good football player. So he's going to add value back there as well. So who knows what this looks like. I do agree though, stylistically, that Jamal Adams and Amani Hooker are like similar. I won't compare them, but they are similar play style wise. In that they're not going to be your coverage safety, right? Like, if you had to have one guy over the top, Jamal Adams was pretty decent in coverage earlier in his years when he had some success there. Not so much in recent years, right? Like literally like sub 60% coverage grades. But I think that there's a good chance you have somebody on the team that can drop back and give you some value. But that's why I think that there's a good chance that they likely will use some more of this money and go bring in somebody else that maybe adds that element, the coverage element to it. And then we said the same thing about the backers, right? Like, we were like, okay, Kenneth Murray, Otis Reese, like, we don't really have a good coverage backer. They went out and got one in the draft. So I still suspect that, they're probably going to give it a go and see how it turns out. But I think there's a good chance that we end up getting somebody in that way. And that's why I think like maybe someone like Eddie Jackson makes more sense than a Quandre Diggs.
Yeah.
But you just kind of have to take who you can at the end of the day. But there's still some talented guys out there that maybe add some value, because at this point, you're not looking to get the starter at that position necessarily. You're looking to get somebody who, is the opposite value of a Jamal Adams, essentially. A guy that when it's like, okay, it's time to drop into coverage, like, we can add somebody that's going to do that. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what training camp shows us.
I think we could be a candidate as a trade partner for any safety that pops up here, around training camp, if there's one that'll be let go, so the safety market is diluted. I do like what you said, Jonathan, about, the guys saying that they want to go to the contenders. I respect the guys a lot more, like Calvin Ridley, that signed and said, you offered the most money.
Yeah. Yeah.
and flashing money on his story afterwards. I respect those guys. I don't respect the guys that say, I want to be a contender, and you end up in, Cleveland.
Yeah, you don't get to pick, bro.
Not
This isn't franchise mode in Madden. You don't get to pick. Like, you can think that, right? Like, some guys do win the Kansas City Chiefs lottery and they're just hanging around, and then they're like, oh, cool, I ended up on this team. But like, your agent, like, that process, you can be smart enough to look at the teams, look at the opportunities, and go, okay, you have two choices. Either you can get in before training camp or in time for training camp to actually be, indoctrinated into a defense that you are going to be playing through the entire season, get some camaraderie going with the staff and the team, and give yourself a good chance to build something, right? Because if you're as good of a player as you say you are, right, and you're as impactful as a piece as you say you are, then you could look at, a handful of teams. And I'm not saying this in defense of the Titans, by the way. I'm talking about any team in the NFL, right? Justin Simmons could easily look at any team and go, okay, I'm not going to get this type of money because this is the market. Cool. It's all good. I got my bag in Denver. Like, get me something respectable and I can sign. If it's really about being on a contender, then you should be able to go, okay, like, what are my options? What teams are interested? I'm pretty sure he had at least a third of the league interested in him, I would say. So let's say like 10-ish teams were like, we're interested. You could look at 10 teams and go, okay, let's take a look at everything that this team has done on both sides of the ball and see, where my best chance is and make that decision. And I'm sure he will, as in the coming days. But at this point, there's zero excuse why this man should not be signed by at least this point in the offseason for that reason. So I don't know, like the whole, like, let's wait and try to get on a contender thing. Like, I get it. But if some of the better teams in the league obviously are solidified at that spot, that the agent can get on the phone and go, hey, Rand Carthon, hey, John Lynch, hey, like whoever, right? And be like, hey, what are you looking like at this spot? We feel pretty good at this spot. Okay, thank you so much. They're good, they said. Like, they're not interested. Let's move on. So I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Simmons isn't on a roster come week 1. I think at this point where the contract stands, I could see the realistic possibility where he goes, I want to be paid regardless, and I'm going to wait till somebody gets injured. I could really see that happening going into week 2, week 3. Somebody goes down. Who's the first person they're going to call? They're going to call Justin Simmons. He's going to come in and he's going to be ready to play that next week.
But then it's ultimate game of chicken, though, right, Jake? Because what happens if that doesn't happen? What happens if the guy who goes down plays for the Panthers? And the Panthers say, hey, we'll toss a bag at you right now. And he's like, the Panthers? And then he could have picked the Titans in the offseason or another team that has a higher ceiling, right? So it's an ultimate game of chicken. And general managers and front office staff understand this. And so the players, they are not in the power position. They're in the power position if the market is showing that, right? Like if there weren't other talented players that had just gotten cut and all these high dollar athletes are on the streets, and it's the market is clearly telling you this position is not valued at this dollar amount anymore. And so these athletes are sitting as free agents waiting for an opportunity, but they are pressed up against the season. So like, if you're Le'Veon Bell at the end of your career and you don't really care, it's like, whatever. But even Le'Veon Bell after the fact said, I regret sitting out that year. I wish I would have played. So guess what? Like at the end of the day, players want to play. It's their number one priority. If you are not playing, you are forgotten about. It's a what have you done for me lately league. And if you sit out that long, like, it's like, okay, this is a risk, like obviously high risk, high reward, right? Like maybe a player on a good team gets hurt and they nab you up really quick and you get a chance to get on a Super Bowl contending team, or you control your own destiny here in the offseason and just make the best decision you can, right? And, ultimately we don't know what that is for Justin Simmons. We don't know like who's contacted him. We don't know what conversations have happened. But what we do know for a fact at this point, because, PK is a very respectable and reliable and trustworthy source in the media, that the Titans were interested and still are interested. So who knows? But I think if I were him, I do believe he'll probably be on a team by week 1. I don't think he would take the risk of sitting out. It's not worth it, especially to him at this point in his career. He's on the backside of his career. Taking an entire year off doesn't necessarily benefit him. He's not hurt or anything like that. So I think that it makes sense for him to jump on a team now, or at least in the thick of the training camp for it to matter. But is it the Titans? Who knows? But I don't think it's about the money. It doesn't feel like it's about the money anymore, right? Like somebody offered him similar dollars to what he got paid, I'm sure, but it was a team he didn't want to play for. So ultimately he has to pick. And by the way, this game of chicken, like he's losing his advantage every single day as we inch closer to the season.
Well, maybe we'll just rely on the morning glory curse like we had last week, where we end the show and Jamal Adams signs an hour later. Maybe come 9 o'clock here Central Standard Time, we'll have a new safety on the team. We'll see how it all plays out.
Look, if that happens, Jake, we're going live again. It doesn't matter. Like, pause the
I don't care what the day is. Yeah. But
we're not waiting an entire week to talk about news again.
No. So I think it's a good stopping point. We're already an hour in, so we're gonna get to our draft. If you guys are joining us for the first time, we do end each show with a draft today. NCAA 25 is out, boys. It's been 10 plus years. It's been a decade. So who are we most excited to play with? It can be in Dynasty. It can be in head-to-head. It can be on the Road to Glory concept. So we're going to go 4 picks each. We're going to go snake draft style. B Will's got the first pick. Jonathan's got the second. I've got the third, and I'll be wrapping around, and we'll go 4 times through. I haven't even got my PS5 yet. Probably going to buy one next week just so I can play this game. That's what I'm excited for. So, starting off with you, B Will, who is the 101 on this?
Man, really, it's a player, but I'm just going to say the team as a whole, and that's Colorado. But really, I mean, Travis Hunter, the guy is basically a creative player out there. I mean, he's ridiculous, but you got him lining up at receiver. You got him lining up at corner. I mean, just think if you created a player in your road to glory and he played 2 positions, you can't even do that. But we got a guy like Travis Hunter that you can, and he's exceptional on both sides of the ball. So, excellent player to play with. I played with him a little bit last night. Made it hard to wake up for the Morning Glory show. I ain't gonna lie.
Then you got Shador out there, number 1 quarterback in the game.
Number 1 quarterback in the game.
That. And then you got Coach Prime, I'm sure, on the sidelines wearing those Blenders gold sunglasses. I mean, the vibes
it's prime
are
time out there, man.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, it's less about like the actual team because of the players that are there. For me, it's about the franchise. Like, what can you do? What can you do with the history? What can you do with the team? And for me, I've lived in Middle Tennessee for most of my life. And for me, the team to rise above the ranks and just get them over the top has always been MTSU. All right. So the Blue Raiders of MTSU, I got to take them. I got to take them to the big one, man. So for me, I'm going with MTSU. It's all about pride. It's all about history of our Middle. There's no history. It's all about pride in the Blue Raiders. All right, that's all. It's going to make the history. So I'm going MTSU.
No, I definitely don't mind that at all. And I've got the turn here. So the first one, we just got to get out of the way. You guys probably could have predicted. I'm going Oklahoma here.
Of course.
A great man once said, "I'm like communion. I'm that wine. I'm that cracker with the wine, or cracker with the juice." And that was the cracker with the juice, and that was the great Danny Studsman, best linebacker in the nation, I think. And then you got Billy Bowman on the back end. Had 6 picks last season. He's got speed, one of the top-rated safeties in the game. And then you go into the true sophomore in Jackson Arnold, which is entering the SEC for the first time. So you can go head-to-head. You can kind of do the franchise with them as well. And then this receiving core is stacked. You got Nick Anderson, who stands at 6'4", 200-plus pounds, is a burner. They brought in Burks, who's already getting hype as a first-team All-SEC player potentially. And then you got Jalil Farouk, who's returning from injury. Lots of speed on this team, and it's going to be a great football team to play with because you got the mobile quarterback as well. So just get that one out of the way. And then that leads me to my second pick, which is going to be Oregon. Oregon
speed.
Got speed. I think they got 2 of the fastest wide receivers in the nation right now. So I'm sure that's going to help Dylan Gabriel, who's transferring from Oklahoma to Oregon. I think he's going to be a 6-year senior. I think he might be a super senior at this point. And he's got great touch on the ball. So you're going to be able to stretch the defense. But Oregon's done a great job recruiting in the past as well. So this is a team that I think will be able to come in. And they've got great tackles. I watched some of those play. I can't remember the names off the top of my head, and I'm not sure what their stats are, but I think they have potential to be drafted this upcoming season. So I'm going Oregon there and Oklahoma. And then back to you, Jonathan.
Oh, this one's easy pick for me. I'm going with the Tennessee Vols. This is a team that has a big-time quarterback going into this year. As far as the talent surrounding him, I think they've done a pretty decent job of recruiting. And this is a football team that has arguably the best pass rusher, in college football right now. And I'm really looking forward to playing. I always have fun playing with the Vols, especially growing up. Like I said, I'm like a non-fan fan. I enjoy college football holistically, just from the atmosphere. I just love the overall like vibe of college football. So I've never really found a team that I've just pitchforked for. But the Vols have always been one that I've rooted for, and this boy Nico is looking good. So I'm excited. This could be a big time quarterback I guess, dynasty here for the Vols coming off of back-to-back guys who have contributed quite well. So we'll see what Nico's got, but I'm really excited for the defense and really excited for what they can maybe do in the passing game. So I'm going to go with the Vols.
Cool. Well, back to you, B.
Most
Will.
definitely.
Jonathan's just going to draft Tennessee teams.
Yep.
He's
Next pick is Chattanooga.
Tennessee teams.
UT Martin.
Yeah.
University of
Awesome.
Tennessee Health and Science Center.
Low-key Vanderbilt?
Possibly.
Low-key, team's not horrible.
That'd be a fun rebuild, I think, with Vanderbilt.
No doubt.
Yeah. So for me, I did a rebuild, and this is something I've been doing. I'm trying to look up the guy's name. I don't have it. But I did a rebuild, and it's sort of a rebuild because they've been so bad, at least for their standards, over the last few years, and that's Miami Hurricanes. So I brought the U back in one of my saves.
Would have been my next pick.
Yeah, so I brought the U back in one of my saves, and it was really good to work with them and to get them up to where they used to be, recruiting like they should be, winning like they should be, and you're playing at Hard Rock in the stadium, glorious stadium in the game. You got a lot. The atmosphere for the U is great. Of course, you got to have a great defensive line if you're with the U. So I recruited the hell out of defensive line, recruited a great running back, and just did it the U way. And that's exactly.
They already got Ruben Bain too. I think he was all ACC as a freshman. Great edge defender. Then you got Cam Ward out there as a transfer, and then Damian Martinez.
Who's the running back?
Damian Martinez.
Yes, he's ridiculous. He's absolutely ridiculous in the game. So you get a good starting spot with Miami, right? So it's not as bad as it seems. And then after that first year, you can get some NIL in. I got Caden Proctor from Alabama. Of course, he transferred after his first year. So I got him in. And, it's not that bad of a save. I recommend everybody do it with Miami.
Yep.
And then
you got that
Florida
recruiting state. Heck yeah.
Exactly. So you get South Florida recruiting. And then my next one, since I got the turn, is similar with Miami, but I'm going to do the same thing with USC and try and bring USC back as well to get them going. And you got a really good recruiting and geography-wise with Southern California. You got the West Coast you can do it with. You got a lot of competition out there with Oregon, though. And Miami does, too, in the South. But, that's what makes the game and recruiting so fun in there.
Get Lincoln Riley out of there. Get B. Will in the front door.
That's right.
All right, Jonathan, back to you.
Oh, man. At this point, there's some really good ones left. And do I want to go rebuild? Do I want to go just talent on, like, the team? It's tough because I don't really, like some of the obvious ones like Georgia. Georgia is a lot of fun. They just have a ton of talent. I'm trying to look for some of those small schools. Like, I have a lot of fun with that. Boise State is an honorable mention just because of the stadium is so cool. So just love that as like a rebuilding thing. I'm going to go with Texas. Texas, obviously, very talented. You got, Quinn Ewers, I'm not a huge fan of, but Arch Manning back there in the game, bro. That's just kind of fun. I love his trajectory and kind of what's potential for him. So, in Texas, I low-key have a soft spot for Texas in my heart as well. I've kind of been watching them closely back with when Vince Young was there and have kind of admired a lot of the players that have come out of that school. So I have a soft spot for them. So yeah, Texas, I think would be a good one.
Man, that makes it hard on me. I got some teams, man. I think I'm going to start with just a team that I'd be super excited for and that I'm excited for this season. And we're going to the A. We're going Arizona here with Noah Fafita and Taratoa McMillan, 6'5", wide receiver out there.
That boy he looks impressive.
I'm super excited to see what they look like out there. As of that, I don't know anybody else on the team, but I'm sure that playbook looks amazing out there. They're going to be throwing the rock. So Arizona would be my next pick. And then I really don't have a rebuild team on here thus far. So that leads
Bring SMU back.
I've done an SMU rebuild and I liked it, but I'm going with all the draft talk that I've had in recent seasons talking about Tajay Spears and Jaquan Jackson. I've amassed quite a few Tulane followers, and Tulane I think is a very underrated college. Tulane is great, and what they've got going on this year is they've got a new coaching staff already coming in. They've lost these guys. They lost Michael Pratt last season. So this is going to be a fun team with a fun atmosphere that I want to see rebuilt and brought in to the upper echelon. So I'm going Arizona with the first pick and Tulane with my last pick, leading you to your last pick, Jonathan.
Honestly, I have some of the most fun like taking schools that are like really, really low and like climbing through the ranks on those. So I want to go with the school that's kind of like, on the outside. But I don't really have any schools that I'm like particularly passionate about outside of MTSU, of course, which if we're being honest, this is where I should have taken MTSU. But that's how high I am. I love on my you can't even call it a rebuild, just a build of MTSU. So SMU is intriguing. Oh man,
there's one more Tennessee team I really like that I'd like to play with. Let's just leave that out there.
Yeah,
man. And Miami was the one that I was hoping would fall to me around this time in the draft too. Let's go with, man, let's go with Memphis. We're going to go with the rebuild with Memphis. That's a city that when you're performing well, when things are clicking, man, they ride or die with you. And so
100%.
That would be a fun school to rebuild with, or build with rather.
You got Seth Hennigan out there at quarterback. I think he's great right now. And Memphis was the only Tennessee team I had on my list. But yeah, I think it's a great team to play with just because the blue jerseys look amazing out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's always talent coming out of Memphis. Very, very underrated as far as running backs coming out. They've had 3 or 4 in the NFL right now.
Yep.
Big time.
Yeah.
Shout out
Super,
Tony
I like Memphis. Yeah. All right, wrapping it up, B. Will.
Yeah, for me, I'm gonna go SMU. I mentioned it earlier. I'm definitely gonna do an SMU build just to bring them back. They got the death penalty, and I'd want to bring them back. I bet you I haven't looked at their prestige and stuff like that. I bet you their prestige isn't that high, but recruiting wise, I mean, there's some appeal to SMU. So aren't they in Dallas? So
yeah, just outside of Dallas. Yeah.
So they're in Dallas. You're gonna have a good pipeline that you can have in the state of Texas and that area. So once you get them rocking and rolling, you can really turn them into a powerhouse, and they don't have bad uniforms neither.
No, now you got the red and the blue jerseys. I like that. Honorable. Well, that wraps it up. My honorable mentions. I had Notre Dame out there. I think just having that legacy is good. And then South Carolina would have probably been my next pick, just because you got Raheem Rocket Sanders, and then you also have Nick Harbor out there, who. We're talking guys you might want to switch to the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball. He was a number 1 recruit to play edge, but he also plays wide receiver. I think he might be the fastest guy in the game. I think I read something. 99 speed, 99 acceleration, and he's like 6'5". I think that would just be super fun to play with. Might be the only guy, but you're winning the Heisman with him. So do you guys have any other honorable mentions you'd like to shout out?
LSU would be fun just because of the recruiting.
Yeah.
Death Valley.
Definitely see that.
Yeah.
Just the stadium.
Yep.
Notre Dame was mine. Michigan, another one that would be fun. A lot of talent.
Well, cool. That wraps it up today, boys. B-Will finishes with Colorado, Miami, the USC, and SMU. Jonathan's got MTSU, and then he's got both UTs and the Volunteers and Texas, the real UT, and then Memphis, and then I've got OU, Oregon, Arizona, and Tulane. That wraps it up today, guys. If you guys joined us for the first time, we appreciate you, first and foremost. Make sure you go check out the Fantasy Championship down below. Join that league. And then we got the Tajay Spears giveaway jersey. Make sure you go subscribe if you're one of the first ones. Once we hit 1,000, we'll be giving that to somebody live on the show after that. Just a little over 200 away. So let's get those followers up there. Let's get those subscribers. So you guys are joining us on X or /Twitter. Make sure you retweet this, like it, help us out. We appreciate it. But we love you guys. We mean it. We will check you guys next Thursday. barring probably another signing here in an hour. We'll see y'all later. Peace.
See y'all.